Hello and welcome to my channel. Enter, if you dare. Hi, we're starting spooky season a little bit early over here. A lot early, okay? I love Halloween, I love special effects makeup, I love doing fun things for Halloween, and I wanted to get a lot of spooky content out. I know it's still August, but like, it comes quick and I need to be prepared. We're a vampire. We will be reading vampire books during spooky season, and so I need your help. I need you to help me pick my bloodthirsty TBR. Are you ready? If you've been around since the Dragon TBR, you will know that all you have to do is listen to the synopsises of these books and then tell me down below in the comments which one you want to see me read. Disclaimer. Do not tell me which books not to read. The way I do this is I keyword search the comments of my YouTube video. So I look up the book title and then it tells me how many times that book title was said. So if you say do not read book title, it counts as a vote for book title. So don't tell me which ones you don't want me to read, only tell me which ones you want me to read and put the actual titles, which will all be in the description bar if you need help remembering the titles. But yeah, these are all vampire themed, and I'm very excited to read some spooky-ish books this season. And I had to turn myself into a vampire for it. We can have a minute for the makeup. Do I look dead? Do I look like I just drank some blood? I'm ready for spooky season. Okay, Goodreads. I need Goodreads open for this. We are starting with a classic you can pick from. So the first book on this list is Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice. Honestly, I do not know a lot about this book. I know it follows a character and it's like his life story. It shows how he was turned into a vampire by Lestat, I believe it is, and the issues he has being indoctrinated into vampire lifestyle, the blood-sucking vampire's lifestyle. And then when he ends up having a companion and turning the companion into a vampire, and then the hate they have for the vampire that originally turned this guy into a vampire. That's what I think it's about, if I'm being honest. It sounds really interesting. It's a classic, so even if I'm completely wrong about what it's about, I want to read it. It is one on this list that I really do want to read. Actually, most of this list is ones I want to read. But I feel like it's a classic that everyone who loves vampires has read. The next book on this list is Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler. Now, another one that sounds really good and I want to read. I'm going to say that about every single book on this list. Fledgling follows a young amnesic girl who has alarmingly inhuman abilities, and that's when she starts to realize she's in fact a genetically modified 53-year-old vampire. Forced to discover what she can about her stolen former life, she must at the same time learn who wanted and still wants to destroy her, and those she cares for, and how she can save herself. Fledgling is a captivating novel that tests the limits of otherness and questions what it means to truly be human. I know Octavia E. Butler's works make you think. I haven't read one yet, but I know that they are stories that mean more than what's on the surface, and when you're willing to think about society and humans, and I love that in a book, so I'm very excited to one day read Octavia E. Butler, even if I don't start here. The next book on this list is Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is the author of Mexican Gothic. This is another story that happens in Mexico. We are welcome to Mexico City, an oasis in a sea of vampires. Domingo, a lonely garbage-collecting street kid, is just trying to survive its healthy policed streets when a jaded vampire on the run swoops into his life. I don't know how to say this vampire's name. ATL. Adel, the descendant of Aztec blood drinkers, is smart, beautiful, and dangerous. Domingo is mesmerized. Adel needs to quickly escape the city, far from her rival narco-vampire clan relentlessly pursuing her. Her plan does not include Domingo, but little by little, she finds herself warming up to the scrappy young man and his undeniable charm. As the trail of corpses stretches behind her, local cops and crime bosses both start closing in. Vampires, humans, cops, and criminals collide in the dark city of Mexico City. Do they even stand a chance of making it out alive, or will the city devour them at all? I've heard great things about Mexican Gothic, but I've never heard anyone talk about this book, which kind of terrifies me a little bit. I'm not sure if this is the right place to start with Silvia Moreno Garcia. Mexican Gothic might be the better place for me to start, but it is on this list, and I will read it if you pick it. And then we have Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This is Dracula before Dracula. This is a short story that predates Dracula by 26 years. In an isolated castle deep in the Austrian forest, Laura leads a solitary life with only her ailing father for company, until one moonlit night a horse-drawn carriage crashes into view carrying an unexpected guest, the beautiful Carmilla. I wish I was Carmilla. So begins a feverish friendship between Laura and her mysterious entrancing companion, but as Carmilla becomes increasingly strange and volatile, prone to eerie nocturnal wanderings, Laura finds herself tormented by nightmares and growing weaker by the day. Carmilla is the original vampire story steeped in sexual tension and gothic romance. It's also only 108 pages, so if you picked this, this would be a blessing. I actually really do want to read this, and if it's not picked for this TBR, I might have to read it sometime soon. It sounds really good. I have not read Dracula yet, and it is not on this list because I'm scared of it, but this sounds good. This next one I could regret putting on this list. I do not have the best relationship with Stephen King, but we are putting Salem's Lot by Stephen King. I have loved some Stephen King, and I've absolutely not been able to read some Stephen King. So I have The Long Walk, I loved and adored, and then I did really enjoy The Institute, although it has its problems. Then there's things like Sleeping Beauties that I tried to read a bunch of times and DNF'd a million times and just never got through it and did not like. But I'm here again. I probably will never stop trying Stephen King because he is the king of horror, and I love his adaptations. I think his books really, really thrive in movie cinema format. I've watched so many of them. I love them. So here I am with a Stephen King Salem's Lot vampire story. I really know nothing about what Salem's Lot is about. Thousands of miles away from the small township of Salem's Lot, two terrified people, a man and a boy, still share the secrets of those clapboard houses and tree-lined streets. They must return to Salem's Lot for a final confrontation with the unspeakable evil that lives on in the town. Like, that gives away nothing, but, like, why does that pique my interest so much? Because I'm like, ooh, what's gonna happen? And to take away some of the creepiness, we have a bit of a humor-filled book. We have The Reformed Vampire Support Group. Interesting enough, this was published before the Final Girl Support Group, and I thought that name was so inventive and creative, so I'm even more obsessed with the Reformed Vampire Support Group, and I think this book sounds absolutely hilarious. And I'm reading you the synopsis because I think it's genius. Think vampires are romantic, sexy, and powerful? Think again. Vampires are dead, and unless they want to end up staked, they have to give up fanging people, admit their addiction, join a support group, and reform themselves. Nina Harrison, fanged at 15 and still living with her mother, hates the Reformed Vampire Support Group. Meetings every Tuesday night. Even if she does appreciate Dave, who was in a punk band when he was alive, nothing exciting ever happens. That is, until one of the group members is mysteriously destroyed by a silver bullet, with Nina determined to prove that vamps aren't weak and useless, and Dave, secretly in love with Nina, at the helm. The misfit vampires soon band together to track down the hunter, save a werewolf, and keep the world safe from the likes of themselves. The perfect antidote to slick vampire novels, the murder mystery comedy of errors will thrill fans of evil genius. Like, that just sounds like such a unique take on vampires and absolutely hilarious. It's part of the reason I think I love the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, is like kind of that humor that was filled with it and the different uniqueness of it. And so, this is on the list. Sounds good. Now, when I deep dived into vampire books, trying to find vampire books for me to read, there's either real smutty books or real classic books, and this list is kind of a mix of both, but one that I was really shocked about is Fevre Dream by George R.R. Martin. I did not know he had a vampire book. Here I am, putting it on this list now, because it's George R.R. Martin. Although I haven't read Game of Thrones, actually, but I loved the show, and I always mean to read the books, but, like, if that last book's not coming, I ain't reading it, but I think we have news that it's coming. I'll wait till it's done. But we have Fevre Dream, which feels like a classic vampire tale. When struggling riverboat captain Abner Marsh receives an offer of partnership from a wealthy aristocrat, he suspects something's amiss. But when he meets the hauntingly pale, steely-eyed Joshua York, he is certain. For York doesn't care that icy winter of 1857 has wiped out all but one of Marsh's dilapidated fleet. Nor does he care that he won't earn back his investment in a decade. York has his own reasons for wanting to traverse the Mississippi, and they are to be none of Marsh's concern, no matter how bizarre, arbitrary, or capricious his actions may prove. Marsh meant to turn down York's offer. It was too full of secrets that spelled danger, but the promise of both gold and a grand new boat that could make history crush his resolve. coupled with the terrible force of York's mesmerizing gaze. Not until the maiden voyage of his new side-wheeler, Fevre Dream, would Marsh realize he had joined a mission both more sinister and perhaps more noble than his most fantastic nightmare, and mankind's most impossible dream. Here is the spellbinding tale of a vampire's quest to unite his race with humanity, of a riverman's dream of immortality, and of an undying legend of the steamboat era and a majestic ancient river. Sounds majestic, sounds elegant, sounds like, when you watch vampire shows, and you see the, because they're all in modern day, but then you get the throwbacks to when they became a vampire. This is what that reminds me of. Those throwbacks of when, those vampires were bitten and fanged into a vampire. I like that term. And speaking of vampire shows, I feel like I could not put a vampire list together without putting these novels on, as I absolutely adored True Blood, so I had to put Dead Until Dark by Charlene Harris, which is the Sookie Stackhouse #1, which are the books that True Blood was based off of. True Blood is a bunch of vampires putting their cucumbers in things and getting their peaches peached and all of that. That's pretty much the whole gist of the show. I feel like that makes up more time than the actual plot, but I absolutely loved the show, and I'm very excited to see if the show and the books are anything alike. I actually think that they won't be, which is a very interesting thing to read, and especially I think to read it after a show. I think I can still appreciate the book if it's different than the show if I read it after I've read the show. Does that make sense? Where it's normally the opposite, where you can't appreciate. I'm going on a tangent, but Sookie Stackhouse is just a small-time cocktail waitress in a small-town Louisiana until the vampire of her dream walks into her life and one of her co-workers checks out. Maybe having a vampire for a boyfriend isn't such a bright idea. I want a vampire for a boyfriend. And then we have the Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I have never read a Paul Tremblay. I know he's a thriller genius, and lots of people love him. So here I am. I actually saw this book in a recent video that Books and Lala Kayla did where she said there was vampires in it. Otherwise, I would have had no clue. I'm not sure if that's a spoiler, but here we are. So you can pick this book. I know absolutely nothing about this book. I know it's a thriller compared to the rest of these that are more... I don't even know what you classify vampire books as, because they're not horrors, they're not thrillers, they're just vampire books. So, here we are. A cleverly voiced psychological thriller about an unforgettable and unsettling friendship with blood-chilling twists, crackling wit, and thrumming pulse in its vein. What a tagline. What if the coolest girl you've ever met decided to be your friend? Art Barbara was not so cool. He was a 17-year-old high school loner in the late 1980s, and he started an extracurricular club for volunteer pallbearers at poorly attended funerals. But his new friend thought the Pallbearers Club was so cool, and she brought along her Polaroid camera to take pictures of the corpses. Okay, that part was a little weird. So was her obsessive knowledge of notorious bit of New England folklore that involved digging up the dead, and there were other strange things, terrifying things, that happened when she was around, usually at night. But she was his friend, so it was okay, right? Decades later, Art tries to make sense of it all by writing The Pallbearers Club, a memoir. But somehow this friend got her hands on the manuscript, and well, she has some issues with it. And now she's making cuts, seamlessly blurring the lines between fiction and memory, the supernatural and the mundane. The Pallbearers Club is an immersive, suspenseful portrait of an unusual and disconcerting relationship. And the last book on this list is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chipeco. No, I've actually heard of Rin Chipeco before, but I've never read a book by them. This one is the most, I want to say, fantasy on this list, which obviously intrigues me as a fantasy reader, but here we go. Full of court intrigue, queer romance, and terrifying monsters, this gothic epic fantasy will appeal to fans of Samantha Shannon's The Prairie of Orange Tree and the adult animated series Castlevania. Now, me and Prairie of the Orange Tree, we've DNF'd a couple times, but we're still on the shelf attempting it again at some point. But I do like Castlevania, so this is looking up. Remy Pendergast is many things, the only son of the Duke of Valenbone, though his father might wish otherwise, an elite bounty hunter of rogue vampires, and an outcast among his fellow reapers. His mother was the subject of gossip even before she eloped with a vampire, giving rise to the rumors that Remy is half vampire himself. Though the kingdoms of Eloria barely tolerates him, Remy's father has been shaping him into a weapon to fight for the kingdom at any cost. When a terrifying new breed of vampires is sighted outside the city, Remy prepares to investigate alone. But then he encounters the shockingly warm-hearted vampire Hiris, Exodian Song, and her infuriating, arrogant fiancé vampire lord, Zidane Malek, who may hold the key to defeating the creatures, though he knows associating with them won't do his reputation any favors. When he's offered a spot alongside them to find the truth about the mutating virus rot that's plaguing the kingdom, Remy faces a choice. It's one he's certain he'll regret. But as the three face dangerous hardships during the journey, Remy develops fond and complicated feelings for the couple. He begins to question what he holds true about vampires, as well as the story behind his own family legacy. As the rot continues to spread across the kingdom, Remy must decide where his loyalties lie. With his father and the kingdom he's been trained to all his life to defend, or the vampires, who might just be the death of him. That one sounds good. It's quite interesting to me how many vampire books have to do with sexual relations, and your cucumbers, and your peaches, and your tomatoes, you know, all of that's good stuff. Like, what is the, I would love to know the background between what the idea of vampires and this addition of sexual relations, like why that's a thing, like why that connection is there, why that's such a prominent thing, because it really is prominent in a lot of vampire books, and I'm excited to see if it's prominent in whatever ones you pick for me. I think I'll only be reading 2 books in this vlog, so comment down your top 2 that you would like me to read. Make sure to put the titles so that they count, and remember to not tell me to not read things, because it will just count as a vote for the book. Anyways, if you made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave your book down below that you want me to read out of this list so that it can be featured in the vlog that is coming soon, sometime in September to October. That's what I call spooky season, if that makes sense. So you're gonna have spooky season content September and October. I think September is more like autumnal reads, and then October is more spooky. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon are all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day. And thanks for joining my coven. I'm gonna go drink some blood. Actually, some wine.